Though popular with the public, the ecclesiastical tide began to turn against Pike, and some in the House of Bishops, whispering heresy, sought ways to silence him. Bishop Moore, however, tried to help.
And we'd get him aside and say, Jim, now you please don't put it this way because it's unnecessary. You're going to alienate everybody and make it tough to get this issue through. And then, you know, he'd go off and talk to reporters, and the headlines the next morning would be disastrous. And we'd grab him and pull him into the room, the smoke-filled room, sit him down, give him a drink, and say, now, wait a minute. You really loused everything up. Will you please behave yourself for the rest of the session? And, of course, he never would, which was part of his genius, but it sometimes drove some of us crazy.
Serious problems now surrounded him, at home as well as in the church. His 20-year-old son, Jimmy, was taking LSD and seeing a psychoanalyst. Together, Pike and his son left for a sabbatical in England, where they caught up on years of their relationship. They talked about life and death. They developed a closeness the two had never known before. On their return to the United States, Jimmy stopped off in New York, alone. He had said goodbye to his father in London. Near Times Square, Jimmy bought a rifle. The despondent note he left in his hotel room would give little reason why he took his life. Was his suicide the result of drugs, or was there another cause? The questions tormented Bishop Pike, even as he conducted his own son's funeral. As he followed Jimmy's wishes and scattered his ashes beyond the Golden Gate, Pike despaired that after finally learning to communicate with his son, the door was irreversibly closed. Or was it? In the years to come, he would defy the boundary of death itself, seeking contact with his son from beyond the grave. Tormented by feelings he had failed as a father, Bishop Pike returned to England to lose himself in his work. In the apartment he had shared with his son, odd events began occurring. Books were found on the floor at a peculiar angle to each other, as though arranged. Inside one book was a postcard his son had bought, stuck as though glued. Throughout the flat were found safety pins, opened so wide they must have been bent that way for some purpose. And there were more postcards lying at the same angle. A clue came when a broken clock whose hands had been stuck at 12:30 was discovered with the hands now stopped at 8:19. The clock hands, the postcards, the books and safety pins, all at the same angle. Bishop Pike calculated that 8:19 was close to the London time when his son died. Was Jimmy trying to communicate with him? Pike was not alone in the apartment. With him were David, his chaplain, and Marin, his editorial assistant. All three were baffled by the strange events and could not agree on a natural explanation. The phenomena occurred so frequently that the bishop began to keep a log of anything that seemed unusual, searching for a pattern or meaning. One day his closet was found with one part much neater than usual, and the other a total mess. The thermostat was found set uncomfortably high, the way Jimmy liked it. And the most startling incident, Pike and Marin watched as a hand mirror moved by itself. How many of the phenomena were as strange as he reported, and how many were the imagination of a grief-stricken father yearning for contact with his son? Bishop Pike wrote that often, in the midst of conversation, he would suddenly become aware of the time, always at 8:19. Some said his obsession bordered on madness. If Jimmy was trying to make contact, what was he trying to say? Perhaps a spiritual medium could provide the answer. Pike sought one to obtain, as he termed it, professional help. "He's here," she said. he's trying very hard to get through. Ina Twigg was a well-known English medium and a member of his church. As she focused her attention on something of Jimmy's, Pike sensed a change. Pike felt that Jimmy was speaking through the medium. His son described how he had moved objects in their apartment, regretted his suicide, and was glad, as he put it, about the Golden Gate. Pike held 2 sittings with Twigg and was impressed. But could she have been told these facts and faked the communication? Did Marin, who some suspected was unbalanced, create the phenomena and feed the information to Twigg, hoping to give Pike reassurance that his son's spirit lived? Pike doubted it, but would seek other mediums in America. Upon his return to San Francisco, Pike realized, as he put it, that he was not twins and could no longer bear his personal strains and hold the office of bishop. Thousands attended his farewell sermon.
If it does not seem that there ever is going to be a second coming, if there was not a virgin birth, if there is not a committee God, the Trinity, if there was no ascension into heaven, if there was no descent into hell, then what can a man believe?
Pike would search for the rest of his life to answer that question. He continued active as bishop without an official position. While teaching a course in religion, he met a young woman who became his companion, administrative assistant, and a stabilizing influence. Diane Kennedy. Invited to join the Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions in Santa Barbara as theologian in residence, he researched 2 of his favorite topics, the Dead Sea Scrolls and the life of the man Jesus. But his agitated life was far from settled. At the 1966 House of Bishops meeting, Pike would be called heretic, then censured.
Well, in simplest terms, what rankled the House of Bishops is that he was basically a pest. He was a pest in that he constantly brought up subjects brilliantly that people would wish that he'd leave alone.
His keen legal mind challenged the censure and demanded to face his accusers in a heresy trial. However, the law was changed, and Pike was never tried.